Oh, Maxine made it. Yay.
Stuff back here. Let's see.
Your wife has taught you well. Yeah. And you get all the extra brownie points you can get, right?
I've already got, I've used them up way ahead, I think.
Okay. I sit on this second row here.
Second row, all right, now I'll scoot over a little, give you a little more room here.
All righty.
It was a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Will you pull these seats up?
Not for anybody except you.
Oh, well, thank you. Very good, very good.
All right. We'll just
Thanks so much.
rearrange it to these suit her needs. We'll take care of that. See you later then.
Uh-huh. You know, it'd be okay if that wind wasn't so bad.
Oh, I know, it was awful, and it was so cold. Ooh,
Yeah.
this morning was really cold. But tomorrow's supposed to be nice, which is good because I have a bunch of errands to run tomorrow. Oh, do you vaguely remember our grandson who comes every year?
Do what?
Do you remember our grandson who comes every year?
No.
Oh, he's 6 foot tall.
I don't
now.
have any grandsons. I just have 2 granddaughters.
Okay, well, our grandson is almost 6 foot tall now. He's only 15.
Oh, well, I noticed he was pretty tall. He was almost taller than you
Yeah.
when he was here.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's taller than me now. Yeah, he's about 6 foot tall now. It's amazing.
I don't know how many will be here, so I better at least leave another 1 seat clear.
Well, I don't see anybody's names engraved anywhere, so we can sit wherever we want. So we just have our certain spots. We try not to look really bad at them when they sit in our spot. Because Jensen likes to teach me. He kind of sits here because he knows I like to sit here. He'll sit here. Then I go, and he moves.
Yeah. I guess I don't have a pen in there.
I might have an extra pen
I probably got one in the purse.
somewhere in all that. There has to be one, at least one, right?
Yeah.
Every once in a while I don't have a pen.
I've got one.
Oh, you got one? Okay.
If it works.
Well, doesn't I have this?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, because I want this. Of course, there's a whole bunch in a can up there at the front, so I could one top that one for you. Those are really good pens. I gotta go by and pick me up one because there's a whole bunch up there.
Oh, I better turn my phone off.
Oh, yeah, you don't be mortified like I go. Oh, you notice that every once, very rarely does it happen anymore. But you see everybody kind of checking theirs to make sure they turn. Mine is on vibrate. Every once in a while I keep going, but quietly. I finally have an iPhone. well, actually, it's Tommy's old one. He did a new one for work, so I got his old one. I still miss my little red one though.
Hello. Hi. I'm not late. Hello, how are you two doing?
You're about actually a couple minutes early from actually starting.
They're all out there like, we're not even having class.
Mhm.
Let's see, John, you good size, I think I better sit here. I wish I could get my back seat back again. Well, I guess I can make Billy and Cal sit up here.
You were there first. The way that I used to sit, I used to, I sit over that corner and look at, well, you don't say it, you didn't say anything, and I realized, this is now my corner,
Maxine,
so.
hello Pat.
Hello,
Hi,
hi.
how are you?
Where's
All right, Donna.
Hello. Hi, Kathy. Hello. How are you?
Hi Kathy.
Hello.
Good, how are you?
How are you? She has very cute boots. You what? Your boots are very cute. Oh, thanks. Are they booties or the booties, right?
Oh,
Yeah, they're short. They're still cute. Thank you. Hello, John.
Let's see.
Miss Lawrence, not here to see you, though?
I've seen her
She is?
walking.
She teaching now.
She's teaching.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes this an open seat.
I'm back, she's gone.
I didn't like that seat over there back when I come.
You had your spot for 3 months.
I didn't want that back seat, no. Everybody claims it, so.
Well, you know, I was sitting
You
there
too?
the last few
Yeah,
times because I got in late, and tonight I get
Oh,
in,
wow.
and you're there.
I'm always, oh.
We can move back there now, Pat.
Actually, Pat is in Kathy's spot, actually.
Oh,
Hey,
you
you're right,
You
Donna.
won't know how to sit on the back row.
I do too. You can turn around and make sure I do every now and then.
Dale, I got your corner Tuesday.
You did?
Where Donna's sitting, yes.
I haven't been able to come to Bible class in 3 weeks.
Actually, it's always something. I don't see anybody
No,
You
I
sitting.
didn't want that spot after all, huh?
I don't even know if I'll get to Tuesday morning Bible class anymore. Well, with,
I finally remembered.
I appreciate that. With Jay and Mary at the house and everything, you know.
How's he
I don't
doing?
Well,
He's babysitting.
it's a long story, but it's a short story.
Okay.
The short side of it is, he had the
Yeah.
2 vertebrae repaired or surgically repaired last Wednesday. And so we took him home Wednesday. He did fine Thursday and Friday, but his instructions said no bending, no lifting weights or anything. And when he would get up, he'd get up this way. And on Friday evening, when I helped him go to the restroom, because until today, he wouldn't walk to the restroom. I had to take him in a wheelchair, and then he'd use a walker into the restroom. Well, when he got up that Friday evening, I heard a pop, and I think that's when he broke the other one. And what happened is, the 2 they repaired was like this. They repaired that one, and they repaired that one, but there was one in here
Yeah.
that they didn't repair. And since these 2 were tight and everything, when he bent over, I'm pretty sure that's when it happened, and that's the pop. And so Saturday and Sunday he couldn't get up, couldn't move at all. It was so painful. In fact, I actually saw him almost cry Sunday. It was so painful. So we got him back to the doctor on Monday, and they did another MRI, which they should have done an MRI to begin with, but they relied on one that was done 3 weeks earlier. Anyway, they repaired that vertebrae, and then he refused to go home Monday night. He stayed in the hospital Monday night, and so I went Tuesday morning to get him. And he stood up. And of course, he has to take medicine for tachycardia anyway. And because he chose to stay overnight, he didn't have his medicine. So he stood up, and his heart rate was 122. And so he sat back down, refused to do anything else, and had me go get his medicine. I went and got his medicine. He took that, and he hadn't had a bowel movement in almost 3 days now. And so I sat there for another half hour, and then he decided he had to have a bowel movement. So that was accomplished. And finally, about 11 o'clock, we got him in the car, and I took him home. And so, other than going to the bathroom, he's laid flat on his back on that lift chair yesterday and today, except to get up and go to the bathroom. Now today, he did decide, the physical therapist came this morning to evaluate him, and then they'll have one come for the lower portion tomorrow, and then some other day one for the upper portion. And I guess they're going to keep rotating it that way for how long, I don't know. But anyway, at least he decided to walk to the bathroom today. But then I had to get the wheelchair and bring him back because he didn't want to walk back. And
Probably weak as can be.
well, he is weak. I mean, he's been down since the 1st of December. And so you've got a lot of atrophy in those legs, obviously. And being 84 years old, you know, that atrophy gets there very quickly. So it's going to take him a while. And he made the comment today, he said, I really thought I'd be back home by this weekend. I said, you're not going home until you can walk. It's as simple as that.
That was his way of saying,
Just
leave him
don't let it
alone.
walk.
I wanna go home.
So,
You're not going.
well, I keep working tough love, but of course my lovely wife fights me on it too because she sides with them. So I've got 3 against me now instead of 1 against me. You know, it used to be just 1. Now I've got 3 against
It's
me.
good
Just
company
don't let
talk.
him walk out your front
Cattle
door.
work.
Why?
Cattle prod work.
You failed going into the front door.
Well, that's why we don't let him walk out.
His wife, his wife's sister out.
Well, you wouldn't wear those leather boots, you know, with the leather insole. But anyway,
He'll do it.
hopefully things will get better for him. And I've shared some stuff with them to get him moved down here because they're going to have to move off the farm. There's no doubt about it. So hopefully they can get moved down here. I'm looking at Silver Elms. Saw Vicki at Smith Medical Supply yesterday. She was buying a wheelchair for her mother, and she's having to put her mother in assisted living in Weatherford. So,
Patty just gave the wheelchair away from her husband.
oh, really? Yeah,
He
Vicki
had a
said,
lot of equipment actually that she just donated.
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was great stuff too.
Yeah.
It's gone. Sorry.
Other than that, as all of you probably should know, that Sharon broke her ankle. Did she get to the orthopedic surgeon?
When she got the orthopedic doctor, he said don't need surgery.
That was
He
good.
got-
But did he put her in a cast?
They put her in one of them,
Boots?
take them off boots things.
Walking boot.
And went and got her one of them knee strollers today.
Those things are dangerous, John. Be very, I'm not kidding. Be very, very careful.
Be careful
with
going
those things.
downhill.
They,
Especially if she's kind of
they,
busy
they
to
tip
begin
over
with.
easy.
This is gonna laugh.
Her throwing at him.
They still, say those things are.
We're in Genesis, the 49th chapter. I'll read verses 5 through 7 again. We didn't quite finish talking about Simeon and Levi, so I'll read 5 through 7 and we'll finish that. And I hope to finish chapter 49 today and then chapter 50 next week, and then we'll get into Exodus. And if it looks like we're going to get finished next week, I'll get the books to you. I'll probably get the booklets to you anyway, so you can start studying ahead on the book of Exodus. But
Camera quit.
do what?
Your camera quit.
Well, I don't know how to fix it.
You don't need any more problems.
You did quit, didn't it? Well, you know, it's difficult to get good help around here anymore.
Well, it's still up there. So
Yeah, but it's
just
not here.
It's quit over there.
Yeah, difficult to
Do
get
what?
good help. It's up
Still
there.
filming up there.
They can see me up there.
All this technical talk is making me
Why
sick.
don't you off up here?
Okay. I don't know. So anyway, let's go to our Heavenly Father in prayer. And Cal, you want to lead us in that prayer?
Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for this day, for the many rich blessings that you bestowed upon us. We appreciate your mighty power and the way you rule this earth. And ask that you bless us as you see we have need in all things. We're thankful for the blessings that you give us as they come. We're thankful for your Son, who was willing to give up heaven and a place with you, to come to the earth, to live as a man, to suffer and to die, that through him we have the hope of eternal life. We're thankful for this opportunity to come and study, to learn more about your word, and about how to live better lives. And we appreciate the fact that we live in a country that we are able to do so. I hope in prayer that you'll bless others, other nations that are seeking you, that they can find the means to find you, and then to live a righteous life in your eyes. Join us in that expectation that we have for a future life with you. Many things we can pray for. Many things, but you know our needs. And we ask that you help with our needs. Our wants can wait. But you know our needs and will bless us as you see we have a need. And we ask now that you bless us in this study, bless us in this week, and through all our lives. Let us be worthy servants unto you. And in the day when you gather all of yours together, may we all be gathered without the loss of one, is our prayer. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. All right, keep in mind in chapter 49, what we're looking at here is Israel or Jacob's prophetic blessings for his sons. We looked at the first one there, and then we looked at verses 5 through 7, Simeon and Levi, and I'll just read that again real quick. It says, Simeon and Levi are brothers, instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Let not my son enter their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox. Cursed to be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. And we didn't quite finish talking about them. What I really want to look at right now is verse 7, where Israel says, I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. And that phrase, I will divide them. Remember, these two brothers joined together to commit this crime that was committed, and as punishment, they should be divided or scattered in the nation of Israel. By the second census, and I think I mentioned this, Numbers 26, Simeon was the weakest tribe. When Moses blessed the tribes before entering Canaan in Deuteronomy 33, he omitted Simeon. Their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Judah then, according to Joshua 19, verse 1. And it did not take long before Simeon was not even recognized as a separate tribe, completely absorbed by Judah. Levi's fate was slightly different. Though they also received no land, they took a stand with Moses in Exodus, the 32nd chapter. When we get into Exodus, you'll see that. Therefore, regaining some of their honor. And they became the religious leaders of Israel and the priestly family. Ultimately, they received 48 cities. These cities were spread across the land where they could do their priestly work for the tribes. And so this is the prophecy or the blessings on these two sons. Any comments through verse 7? Yes,
there were some lands available that went with the cities,
Yes.
so they could grow their own crops, stuff
Yes.
like that. But they did not receive as a tribe an inheritance of a bunch.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, good point.
But they were scattered throughout all the tribes.
Yes, yes. So they could do their priestly duty. And we'll see that more as we get into Exodus, okay? So let's look at verses 8 through 12 then. Isaac, let's begin with you. If you read verses 8 through 12. And I might mention in your handout, it's on page 124, capital letter E and F would be verse 8 and 10. Yeah, and just those two, E and F. All right, Isaac, read 8 through 12 for me.
Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion who shall rouse him, arouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. Binding his donkey to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he washes garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk.
Okay, so Israel or Jacob is prophesying that the Messiah obviously will come through the lineage of Judah. And Judah's name means praised, and Jacob says that the brothers will praise him in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 1 through 3. Ron, you have that?
Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and spoke, saying, Indeed, we are your bone and your flesh. Also in time past, when Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel out and brought them in. And the Lord said to you, You shall shepherd my people Israel, and be ruler over Israel. Therefore all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel.
All right, so the brothers will praise him according to what Israel said. That statement, your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies, that Isaac read. This figure shows an enemy who is defeated. Thus, Judah's tribe would succeed in warfare. In its history, God achieved many victories through Judah. Earlier, when the brothers were debating the best way to rid themselves of Joseph, it was Judah who protested, Let not our hand be upon him, back in Genesis 37 and verse 27. You had that, Maxine?
Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him. For he is our brother and our flesh, and his brethren worketh in.
All right. Also, Israel said to Judah, or in this blessing, he said, Judah is a lion's whelp. A lion is some of the other versions would say. Each instance of a lion in this verse is a different word, whether you look at the lion's whelp, a lion, or a lioness. They are accounting for 3 of the 7 Hebrew words for him, or for lion, I should say. There may be a sense of movement or growth by Judah in this situation, in the verse by the change in lion imagery from a young cub to a lion, okay, an adult lion. So he goes on to tell him he bows down, who shall rouse him? In other words, Judah is likened to a fierce lion that has seized its prey, returned to its den, and here lies daring anyone to challenge this prey. Okay? Then he says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. Now, obviously, the scepter symbolizes rule and royal power. In fact, it's a long staff that the king held in his hand when speaking in public assemblies. And when the king was seated, he sat down to arbitrate. It would be between his feet then. Again, emphasizing the power here. This also goes back to Genesis 38 and verse 18. John, you hear that?
And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? And she said, Thy signet and thy bracelet and thy staff that are in thine hand. And he gave it her and came unto her, and she conceived by him.
Okay, this is where Judah leaves his staff and his seal with Tamar as a pledge then. Now there's another statement that Israel uses here, until Shiloh comes. This is a very, it's a statement that is something of a conundrum. And I mean this by the meaning of the Hebrew is arguably the most debated statement in Genesis. Shiloh seems to be a reference to the Messiah, but it occurs nowhere in the Old Testament as a messianic title. The New Testament never cites this verse as being fulfilled, and no one is exactly sure what Shiloh means. Jewish leaders sought clarification for this passage, and they used Ezekiel 21, verses 26 and 27. Pat, you had that?
Thus says the Lord God, remove the turban and take off the crown. Nothing shall remain the same. Exalt the humble, and the humble exalted. Overthrow, I will make it overthrow. It shall be no longer, until he comes whose right it is, and I will give it to him.
Okay. If you turn there, you might keep your thumb on that, and as I make a few comments here, look at what I'm talking about here, because they suggested that behind this word lies the Hebrew word shel, S-H-E-L, meaning which, and lo, L-O-H, meaning belongs to him, which belongs to him, okay? Thus understood, the meaning of Shiloh accords with Ezekiel 21, verse 27, where it says, until he comes to it, until he comes to whom it rightfully belongs. If that meaning is to be imported to this verse, then the word "it" in Ezekiel 21:27 would have reference to either the judgment or the scepter, either of which would make the promise mean that the royal Messiah, to whom the throne rightfully belongs, will come through Judah. Until now, the birthright and blessing had come to the same son. Here it is split between Joseph and Judah. Joseph has already received the birthright, the double portion of the physical inheritance in Genesis 48 that we looked at earlier. But here, Judah receives the blessing, which is the spiritual inheritance of the messianic line. And so he says, binding his donkey to the vine and his donkey's coat to the choice vine. This is in chapter 49 again. He washed his garments with wine, or in wine. This is the turning point of this blessing, if you will. In fact, in verses 11 and 12, they relate to the lot of Judah in Canaan and the advantages which they would enjoy along with the other tribes until the coming of Shiloh. It was foretold that Judah's inheritance should abound in vines so strong that they would tie their young donkeys to them. The vines would be so fruitful that their garments would be strained with the juice of the grape. They would have plenty of wine so that their eyes would be darker than wine and their teeth whiter than milk, with which also their lot should abound, the pasture ground being very fertile. Much of the preceding prophecy has been applied to Christ, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, terrible to his obstinate foes, but merciful to those who submit. And we may also observe that he is the true vine. That wine is the appointed symbol of his blood, which is drink indeed, as shed for sinners and applied in faith, and that all the blessings of his gospel are wine and milk, without money and without price, to which every thirsty soul is welcome. Any comments through verse 12? Yes, Cap?
Well, essentially, they're the royal family.
Yes.
And they wear the purple.
Yes.
So washing their clothes in Orion gives them the purple cast.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that was the dye that they used until they discovered the shellfish off fire. So that was the way they got those dark colors.
Yeah, good point. Appreciate you bringing that out. Any other thoughts? All right, look at verse 13 then. Kathy, you want to read that?
Zebulun shall dwell by the haven of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his borders shall adjoin Sidon.
Okay, so Zebulun shall dwell by the haven of the sea. Zebulun is the 6th and the final son of Leah, the 10th overall. This order is also followed in Moses' blessing in Deuteronomy 33, verses 18 and 19. And there's a couple of points I'll make about Deuteronomy, but Stephanie, you want to read Deuteronomy 33, verses 18 and 19?
And of Zebulun he said, Rejoice, Zebulun, in your going out, and Issachar in your tents. They shall call the peoples to the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall partake of the abundance of the seas, and of treasures hidden in the sand.
Okay, now I didn't make a map, and I should have, of these 12 tribes of Israel. That statement that Israel makes, he shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall adjoin Sidon. The tribe of Zebulun was located in the north near both the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean Sea. But the tribe did not touch either one of those seas. It was just located nearby. The tribe of Zebulun extended nearly, if not entirely, from the Sea of Galilee to the Mediterranean Sea, on which some think it had seaports. The maritime situation in which this tribe was placed tended greatly to enrich it, both by fisheries and by commerce. In Deuteronomy 33, verses 18 and 19, which Stephanie read, and also its inheritance reached to the borders of that country of which Sidon was the capital. Okay? Any comments on Zebulun?
Well, I see the different maps. I'm trying to figure out just, it looks like it's got Asher between it and the sea, but it may be that these ancient maps that here they have aren't correct.
Yeah.
That they're the ones that they've drawn in the Bibles.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure exactly what they owned up there. But
Well, I'm not
apparently they
either.
could be influenced by what happened at Tyre and Sidon.
Yeah,
And so, which would not be a good influence.
that's true.
And because from Tyre and Sidon is where it came the worship of the Baals and some of the other things.
Right.
And the high places.
Yeah, good point. All right, Chris, you want to read Genesis 49, verses 14 and 15?
Issachar is a strong ass, couched down between the two burdens. And he saw that rest was good in the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulders to bear, and became a servant unto tribute.
All right, Issachar is a strong donkey. He had the advantage of physical strength, is the point that's being made here, but he was also lethargic and unambitious. He saw that rest was good. Israel made this point. The sin is as old as Adam and Eve, if you will. The woman saw that the tree was good. Do what? Well, that's making noise at me. The woman saw that the tree was good for food, and the Issacharites saw a resting place that was good. That's the comparison that I would make there. Because he preferred rest to work, he did nothing, ultimately becoming a worker for others. The tribe is mostly slighted in the book of Judges. It is not mentioned in the inventory of the tribes in Judges chapter 1, or in the prose accounts of the battle against Canaan and Midian in Judges chapter 4 and chapter 6. This means that it played no significant role, and in fact, an inglorious one during this period. Any comments on Issachar?
Apparently their inheritance was down around the area of Jezreel.
Yeah.
Which, once again, was a source of these different religions, or different variations of the same religion, if you will,
Yeah.
that stress pleasure and that type of thing.
Okay. All right, let's look at verses 16 and 17 then. Donna, you want to read that for me, please?
Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a horned snake in the path that bites the horse's heels, so that his rider falls backward.
Okay, all of this is in your handout of page 125, capital letter G, okay? But as I have up there, Dan shall judge his people. So, Dan, whose name signifies judgment, was the eldest of Jacob's sons by Bilhah, Rachel's maid, and he is here promised an equal rule with those tribes that sprang from either Leah or Rachel, the legal wives of Jacob. Some Jewish and some Christian writers understand this prophecy of Samson, who sprang from this tribe, and judged, or as the word might be translated, avenged the people of Israel 20 years later. Look at Judges, the 13th chapter and verse 2. Billy, do you have that by chance?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
13.
And Cal, if you want to turn to Judges 15, verse 20.
Now there was a certain man from Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children.
Okay. And Judges 15, verse 20, Cal.
So he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines.
All right, so now, part of the reason I spend as much time as I am with these sons and everything is so that you have a full appreciation of why these blessings were given to these individuals and how it pertains later on as the Old Testament continues to reveal to us what God wants us to know. And so Dan, he says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way. This is referring to Dan's lack of moral commitment and tendency to encourage idolatry. And this is in Judges, the 18th chapter. It has been cited as the reason his tribe is omitted in Revelation 7, verses 5 through 8. Karen, you had that?
Yeah. 12,000 from the tribe of Judah were sealed. 12,000 from the tribe of Reuben. 12,000 from the tribe of Gad. 12,000 from the tribe of Asher. 12,000 from the tribe of Naphtali. 12,000 from the tribe of Manasseh. 12,000 from the tribe of Simeon. 12,000 from the tribe of Levi. 12,000 from the tribe of Issachar. 12,000 from the tribe of Zebulun. 12,000 from the tribe of Joseph. 12,000 from the tribe of Benjamin were sealed.
And not once in Revelation chapter 7 did you hear the name Dan. And so, because of his moral commitment, lack of moral commitment, and his tendency to encourage idolatry, may explain why he was omitted from Revelation chapter 7. Any comments through verse 17? All right, look at verse 18 then. This deals with, well, read verse 18 for me, Jensen, if you will.
I have waited for your salvation, O Lord.
All right, so in these words, Jacob or Israel, foreseeing the distresses of his children, prays that God would help them and teach them to look up to him in their necessities, especially to wait for the Messiah. Or, perceiving his approaching death and his spirits beginning to fail him, he interrupts his speech to his sons with this exclamation, signifying, I wait, O Lord, for a happy deliverance out of this world into a better place, which all faithful Christians should be able and should desire to say that very same thing. Look at verse 19. Isaac, we're back to you.
Yeah, a troop shall tramp upon him, but he shall triumph at last.
All right, so now Israel continues with his sons, and Gad will be pressed hard, but he will in turn press hard against those who assail him. The tribe of Gad was east of the Jordan. Throughout history, it was attacked many times by nations such as the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Armenians, and Assyrians, all of which is recorded in the Bible or other history. And as a consequence of their wars for survival, the Gadites became renowned warriors. Let's look at 1 Chronicles chapter 5 and verse 18. And Ron, while you're there, just go on over to chapter 12, if you will, and read verse 8 and verse 14 too.
The sons of Reuben, the Gadites, and a half of the tribe of Manasseh had 44,760 valiant men able to bear shield and sword, to shoot with a bow, and skillful in war, who went to war. Chapter 12, verse 8, some Gadites joined David at the stronghold in the wilderness, mighty men of valor, men trained for battle, who could handle shield and spear, whose faces were like the faces of lions, and were as swift as gazelles on the mountains.
Okay, and verse 14.
These were from the sons of Gad, captains of the army. The least was over 100, the greatest was over 1,000.
All right, any comments about Gad? All right, let's look at verse 20 then, Maxine, of chapter 49.
Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties.
Okay, so bread from Asher shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dainties, is what we see here. And Asher signifies the blessed, and Jacob, by the spirit of prophecy, assigned him a plentiful country, yielding abundance for himself and others, even royal dainties to supply the table of kings. At home and abroad, his inheritance bordered on Carmel, which was fruitful to a proverb. Looking at Joshua 19, John verses 24 through 26, if you will.
These papers separated.
You need to put a little powder in those pages so they won't stick together.
You can't read them.
Oh.
Unless you guess.
Yeah, Joshua 19 verses 24 through 26.
And the fifth lot came out for the tribe of the children of Asher, according to their families. And their border was Elkatha and Elah and Benton and Ashtath.
That's good enough. Well, you haven't finished reading it.
Oh. You want me to read some more than that?
Through 26.
And Lemonhead and Amad and what do you give me all these words for?
Because I know you can handle it.
To Carmel westward and to Lihor or Libmath. That's it.
Better you than me.
What did we just read?
If they ain't right.
I need you to repeat that.
That's good enough, John. Pat, read Isaiah 35 verse 2 for me.
I bet she ain't got on her.
I bet she hadn't either.
It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice, even with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the excellence of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the excellency of our God.
Okay, this is everything we see about Asher then. That's why Israel says, bread from Asher shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dainties. Okay, any comments on Asher? Yes, Cal?
Yeah. Well, Asher's along the seacoast up there. And if you take a look at the old maps, it's even south of Carmel, but goes on up through Tyre to Sidon.
Mm-hmm.
And so they inherited this very rich land. Here's where the cedars are. It's a very good place to have. What used to be Lebanon, okay?
Yeah.
And so what happens here is they have this rich, but it is by the time of David, Phoenicia, the cities of Tyre and Sidon have joined together and become a seafaring nation, and they are taking over that land. So by the time of David comes in here, all the way down to Mount Carmel, actually was controlled by the Phoenicians. So they had it for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't keep it.
Right.
It was too rich, and they couldn't hold it.
Yeah. Okay, good point. Appreciate you bringing that out. All right, Genesis 49, verse 21, Kathy.
Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words.
Okay, so this refers to being fleet of foot. Unless we are to understand Barak and the 10,000 of Naphtali and Zebulun as fulfilling this word in Judges the 4th chapter, we can find no record of any fulfillment of Naphtali. Some see the beautiful words as Barak's part in the Song of Deborah in Judges the 5th chapter, which will not take time to read that, but this is what we have on Naphtali. Any comments on Naphtali? All right, look at...
They talked a good fight.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Look at verses 22 through 26, Stephanie, of chapter 49.
Joseph is a fruitful bow. Is that right? Bow?
Bow.
Oh, bow.
Whatever you would call it. A fruitful bow by a well. His branches run over the wall. The archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. But his bow remained.
That's bow.
Sorry. Got stuck on one word, okay?
Play words.
But his bow remained in strength. Did you want this one, John?
I would say bow.
Bow, whatever. You know what I mean. And the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, by the God of your father who will help you, and by the Almighty who will bless you. The blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breast and of the womb, the blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors, up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who separate from his brothers.
Okay. So, looks like we're not going to quite finish with chapter 49, but we'll get a good portion of it. So, the person who is afflicted the most can become the most profitable by the hands of the mighty God. And this was the case of Joseph here. Part of what Jacob says concerning his beloved Joseph is historical, and it relates to his past life, though much is prophetical. He is here called a fruitful bow or bough, whichever you want to say, or young tree planted by the waterside. He had no more than 2 sons. We talked about them earlier because they were blessed by Israel. Yet from them sprang 2 very numerous tribes. But his prosperity was preceded by injuries and heavy afflictions. Okay? The statement, the archers are such as were most skillful in the use of a bow, and they had bitterly grieved him or shot at him and hated him. Israel makes that statement. His brethren, in other words, pursued him with unrelenting envy and enmity, and spared his life only to sell him for a slave. And this was part of the blessing. Potiphar's wife tempted and then slandered him. Potiphar condemned and imprisoned him. This part may likewise be considered as prophetical of the terrible wars which his descendants waged, especially with the kingdom of Judah. His weapons, however, in this warfare failed him not, as a broken or weakened bow would have done, and his hands and arms were strengthened to use it by the power of God, of the God of Jacob, who in providence outwardly protected and prospered him. Thus he was enabled to stand his ground and to repel every attack of his enemies. His life was preserved, his reputation was cleared, his integrity remained unimpeached, and rising superior to all opposition. His brothers were ushered to him and became dependent upon him, and all his enemies bowed before him and sought his favor. By the divine assistance and blessing through all these trials and troubles, he at length became the shepherd of Israel, as Israel says here, to sustain his father and family, and to take care of them with all their flock and herds, and the stone of Israel, which is the foundation and strong support of their interest. In this respect, then, as in many other things, he was a remarkable type of the Good Shepherd and tried cornerstone of the whole church of God. Thus Joseph, being helped by the God of his father Jacob, was personally and in his posterity triumphant over all his enemies. It was also predicted that God would bless his posterity with a temperate climate, a fruitful soil, the treasures that are dug from the bowels of the earth, a numerous and healthful progeny, and extensive and durable blessings of every kind, even like the mountains which shall endure as long as the earth itself, and as precious as their most desirable productions. All these benefits, then, were typical of the vast and everlasting blessings that are conferred upon the spiritual seed of Christ. Thus Jacob blessed all his sons, more particularly and clearly than Abraham and Isaac had done. The promises also drew nearer to their accomplishment, and his seed were multiplying very fast, but especially Joseph, who was separated from his brethren, and not only as so by them in Egypt, but as possessing eminent dignity, and as far more excellent than they. It is interesting to note that there are no great spiritual blessings foretold for Joseph's descendants. Regardless of how faithful their father Joseph was, the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh never excelled in faithfulness. Jeroboam, an Ephraimite, for example, led the northern kingdom into idolatry, from which it never recovered. Any comments about Joseph? Yes, Cal.
It seems most of this is dealing with Joseph himself.
Yes, it was.
Not with futures. I don't believe he just had just two sons. I think he had other children. Remember, Jacob said, "These two are mine.
Right.
Your other children will be yours."
Right.
But they were numbered. Those other children were numbered in the tribes of Ephraim
Yes.
and Manasseh.
Yes.
And so, but I think what's really indicative here is he singled out, as more is written about Joseph than I think just about anybody in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, Moses was longer count, but deals with him so explicitly and shows his testing by God and how he overcame that testing and survived it, and so he was blessed. And Joseph, when you look at his life and compare him to Jesus, he is the type of Savior. He is the type. Jesus would be the antitype. And man, there's so many direct correlations there that it's just amazing.
Yeah. True. And another point I would make on this, everything that I just said about Joseph and everything, if you think about everything Joseph has been through and the blessing that Israel gave to his son Joseph, the good lesson for us is that here is a man who was faithful all his life. And because of his undying faith in God, he reaped the benefits of all of that. And the lesson to us is if we're faithful, then we can reap the benefits as well. So, all right, we'll finish up chapter 49 next week and even finish